Welcome to another episode of the Career Talks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Orlando Haynes. Each and every week, we bring you phenomenal guests to provide you actionable advice for your career and life. And again, we should just give it an applause on how many phenomenal guests have come through the Career Talks podcast. This is going to be an exciting one as well. I have this amazing young lady who I reached out to who's followed the podcast. Super excited to hear her personal journey of her career path. So, without further ado, let me just bring this amazing young lady to the stage, Miss Jean Kang. How are you?
Oh my God, that just warmed my heart so much, Orlando. Love the video, the music, and then the bang with just the lovely intro. It's so good to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. We connected. I reached out. You reached out. We talked. And it was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. She's dynamic. I've seen the content. I'm like, let's go. Are you kidding me? Let's go. So share with folks more about who you are, your background, and then we will get into it.
Yes. So a little bit about me. I am an accidental program manager. I don't
Mm,
have the formal experience. A lot of people, we hear about the PMP, right? Are you PMP certified? Are you Scrum Master certified? I am zero certified. That's who I am. I broke into tech almost a decade ago without any connections, without knowing anybody in this space. But since then, I've had 7 different jobs at 7 different companies and somehow landed phenomenal dream jobs. Think places like Meta, LinkedIn, and now Figma. And now I'm just so humbled that I get to share my story on places like this and kind of pay it forward. So that's just my TLDR of my background.
love it, love it. So you transitioned also, not also with your including your corporate career, you do some coaching too. But what we're going to talk about tonight, and you can weave it in how you want into the conversation, um, paving your own way through program management. So now that's rare. You would know more than me without the certifications, right? Everyone's getting those. I have a great friend who recently got hers, but you did it without it. So some folks may be like, "How in the heck did you do that?"
Yeah.
So have some questions, folks. So everyone chime it in, say hello. I see a bunch of folks tuning in. Say hello to Gene and myself. But yeah, start with that journey. At what point in your career, what were you doing? Let me ask you this: what were you doing prior to,
Yeah.
and then what was that pivot moment for you, and how did you start that change?
Yeah. So I think it will help the audience to get grounded on, like you said, what was I doing before?
Hmm.
So I won't go too far back, but what I was doing before I was a full-time program manager was I was a client solutions manager. It's basically a fancy word for account management, dealing with a book of business, managing my clients, working with different stakeholders. I had a defining moment. I was working at Pinterest at that time, where my manager said, "Hey, we have this really big, meaty program to run." This is right before Pinterest went IPO. So all eyes are on us, and this has an impact to the company, our customers, our entire function, organization. And they said, "Hey, we need somebody on this team to help PM this project." PM meaning, hey, we need someone to kind of take this project to fruition. It was a customer migration. And hey, do I have any experience PMing before something end to end as big of a project like this? Hell no. I mean, yeah, like I don't have experience, but I raised my hand and I bet on myself. I said, hey, I think I have what it takes to do this. Um, Give me the opportunity. So I would say that was the defining moment for me where I learned a lot of the core fundamental program management responsibilities in my current role. So I'll just list out a few of what that looks like. It's project planning. It's bringing in your stakeholders on the journey. Why is this important? What are we doing? What are the timelines and milestones? And then additionally, things like communication. How am I touching base with my stakeholders on how the project is progressing? What are some wins? What are some learnings? What are some next steps? How am I doing that regularly so that folks have a pulse on what's happening, giving the high profile and the visibility of this work? So it was me learning that on the job, and then my manager through this job taking note and telling me, hey, Jean, you're a really good program manager. And that's when it kind of like there was a light bulb moment. Oh, this can be a full-time job. And I know that there are a lot of full-timers doing this. So I would say I haven't looked back as soon as my manager at that time kind of connected the dots for me.
So, which leads to my next question, and you just answered it. Did you know you had those transferable skills leading into it, or did it have to be pointed out to you saying, "Hey,
Mm,
you've actually executed on these things, and here's what actually goes into being a PM.
mm,
Why not go full time?"
mhm. I think it was a combination of both. I would say that I have been honing in on those soft skills, be it like the project planning, like creating a timeline that I had to learn through the job, but things like communication, knowing how to communicate with different audiences, right? If it's my
Mhm.
team, it's a certain level of altitude of in detail. If it's my manager, it's this. If it's leadership, it's X. If it's my customers, it's X. I think that had played a very it was I was able to hone in on those further. And so those weren't net new skills, right? Like the communication, having strong emotional intelligence. Um, so I knew I liked doing that in my role. So the fact that I was doing that more of that in this project, I think helped connect the dots for me. On top of like somebody validating, hey, you are good at this, kind of solidified, oh wow, now I feel like I have what I need to take that plunge and make this my full time.
Now, that transition, was that from a completely different company, or did you
Mm.
was okay, so it was. So did you go through the normal path of revamping the resume, have it speak to more program management type verbiage, and then applying for it, almost applying and praying because
Oh,
you didn't have the certifications, right? So what was that
oh,
process, that bridge like? Is this
yeah.
even going to work?
Yeah, no, no, no. I mean, that's such a good question. And I would say also a little backstory into this is as soon as I knew in that role, I launched a successful program, did it for about 3 to 6 months. I try to find an opportunity internally because that
Mhm.
was the lowest barrier to entry, right? I've already built rapport. I've already solidified that I can run something end to end. How about I find that at Pinterest? But unfortunately, at the time, there was just no openings in that role, which is why it forced me to look externally. So that did mean I have to do the entire grind,
Mhm.
fixing my resume, like knowing my value. How am I crafting the story? Because I'm pivoting, right? I'm pivoting an entire different role, albeit I have experience with like real concrete programs that I have run. I didn't have that title to say I am a program manager seeking a program manager job. So I spent a lot of time tailoring, tweaking, and I think what helped me was but most of my experience is in big tech. I worked at Pinterest, I worked at Meta. So I think the fact that I was already in the tech space made it an easier move to stay in the tech space.
Mhm.
So I applied to places like, well, I applied to LinkedIn and I was like, okay, I think I can do this job. It was a program manager role, and it was super, super niche. And if I want to talk about giving any like secret tips or spilling the tea, I would definitely say this is one of them, is
Hmm.
getting really tailored on the type of role that you wanted. We hear about riches in the niches. It definitely applies in the job search because I worked at Pinterest. I have like advertising operations experience. I worked at Facebook at the time as a client solutions manager. Um, so the function that I was in was customer success, and I found a program manager role for customer success at LinkedIn, doing enablement for the customer success teams. In my role at Pinterest, I did enablement for sales teams and the CS teams that are much smaller. So I found my pocket. I'm like, oh, I have that they're looking for. I have this that they're looking for. There are some still pieces that I don't fit 100% of the criteria, but I had enough to work with what I had to fine tune my resume entirely.
Wow. So you touched on an interesting point
Mhm.
there. A little side note that
Mhm.
you hear the reports of women tend to wait for 100% kind of clarity and match up on the job. Uh, what's what I'm looking for, a job description before they apply. Well, men will do it at 60%, 70%. They're like, I'm going for it.
Yeah.
So, what percentage did you feel you were like, I'm good and I'm
Uh-huh.
just going to shoot for it?
Yeah. So I think I hit 70%. And I'm so proud
That's good.
that I did that. I mean, hindsight is 2020, and your girl got
Hmm.
the job. But that being said, it was a gamble, right? Like LinkedIn, obviously, amazing company. It's a full-time program manager role. They have asked for somebody with the PMP. Your girl did not have the PMP. So that's one of the things I was like, oh shoot, I don't check this off. And I don't have 5 years of doing program management work full time, but where I did shine was those soft skills and being able to translate my story, translate the impact of my work. And what I learned is that in the interviews, it's all behavioral, right? It's like how you think, how you solve problems, how you help other teams. And luckily, just that one program alone, I was able to kind of conjure up 10 different types of examples, um, to kind of reel them in.
So, do you think that is something innate in you, or did you learn it through your corporate journey as a client success manager in, or a combination of the two? Like, where did you learn where you had the confidence, the poise to go in there and be like, hey, I'm 70%. I don't, here's all the big check marks that I don't have, which traditionally a company be like, wouldn't even give you a call, right? The recruiter would have never called you,
Mhm.
but it happened. So that lets me think a little bit. LinkedIn has a different culture and how they
Mhm.
view, candidates and what they consider to be quality. And this was an internal apply that you were doing at the time, or brand new? I missed
Yeah.
that part. So,
So Yeah, so with this role, I mean, cold apply, straight up cold
okay.
LinkedIn job apply, like it says easy apply. You don't just submit your whatever, like just the default resume. Obviously, you have to tailor and tweak it, but I just slid it through. Did not have any connections at LinkedIn to get an idea of like, what's this team like or what's
Hmm.
the hiring
Hmm.
manager like. So I really just kind of did the best on my resume, hope for the best. And actually, one thing that might have helped is when I applied to this role, there was maybe like less than 5 applicants. It was really little.
Really?
So I think what happened is a lot of people were intimidated to apply because of the title of the job because it was so niche.
Mm.
Where I doubled down, I think most people would be like, oh, I don't think that's for me. Uh, because my role at LinkedIn, it's the longest program manager title of all times. It's go to market enablement program manager for customer success, LinkedIn sales solutions.
Holy cow. That's not on a business card.
No, no, exactly. And that is, I mean, we hear about program manager roles, but that is kind of like on another level, right? A lot of
Mhm.
people don't know what that is. And I think, yeah, that probably helped me stand out too.
So where did the confidence come though? Where did that come from to even apply? Right. Again, you
Mhm.
said you're at 70%, didn't have
Yeah.
the certifications, the 5 years.
Mhm.
Where did the confidence come from? And then in the midst of the interviews, where questions could have been coming all kinds of high level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where did
Yeah.
that come from?
My confidence, I would say that confidence is deep rooted. I think the fact that I mean, as you know, I pivoted jobs like over 7 different times in a span of 9 years. So
Mhm.
I'm hopping around a lot. So I think the fact that I've seen myself chase after new opportunities, land them several times, I think has instilled this me and level of like, let's try it. What's the worst thing that I can do if I go for it?
Mhm.
If I don't get it, it's fine. I rack up experience. I have interviewed for this program manager role at places like LinkedIn, and then that will better prepare me, set me up for success for other roles that I would apply for. So I think that innateness just came from me, even going back to college, like, I don't know this, but I will figure it out. And I think that
Mhm.
has pulled my career forward in anything that I've done. That being said, the project that I worked on at Pinterest, where like my manager said, like, hey, you're really good at this role. I think that gave me even more fervor about the type of work that I faced. All the because it wasn't. I think I messed up a lot in that role. And I was able to kind of articulate, hey, here's how I learned about program management, where I have fallen
Mm.
short, where I've tweaked that. And I think that growth mindset also helps them envision me that, okay, I'm going to be thrown into something new, but I will figure it out.
So I love that you shared transparency, right?
Mhm.
I don't know anyone who's succeeded every single time at every
Mhm.
single role at every single level. So talk us through that a bit where what's a lot, right? When you say you've kind of messed up a lot,
Yeah.
and what was that development you received to again to possibly regain your confidence? Because at some
Mhm.
points when you fail, you're like, oh wow, today's Friday. They're about to cancel me right now after this
Mhm.
one. So walk us through that journey there a bit.
Yeah. I will, an example that I remember when I was leading this like customer migration program, it was basically we had so many of our top revenue generating clients that were using this old product and we needed them to move over to this newer product. It was Pinterest shopping ads at that time. So one thing that I learned that I actually failed in my role was i I created this process of like QAing all the different work that needed to be done. But there was stuff that I didn't think about where it fell through the cracks. And so I didn't have a bulletproof, think about like a bulletproof process or a
Mhm.
bulletproof mitigation plan. And so, like, there were internal teams that were really confused about it, and customers that were writing in was like, oh, like this doesn't make sense. And I obviously like I think the gut reaction is like, oh shoot, I messed up here,
Mhm.
right? And I can choose to beat myself about it and say I'm not a good fit for this. Or you can acknowledge that you didn't do it perfectly, but you are doubling down on what did go well and being self-aware about where you fell short and tweaking that, adjusting it. So you ask for feedback. You ask feedback from the team. You ask feedback from the customers. You ask feedback from your manager. And then you come up with a better plan. So this was before, this is the gap. This is a plan that will address that gap and see, just trial and error that out. So that's when I got tighter with my communication. I got tighter about doing retros, what went well during the end of the week, what did not go well at the end of the week, and then how do I get even better the following week. So that's kind of the embodiment that I demonstrated in my work and that other people were able to see.
Hmm.
And through that you get better and you see the results kind of speak for itself. And that becomes your narrative, your story, right? I think actually makes you stronger of a candidate when you can talk about where you have fallen short, and you can talk through the steps that you took to right that wrong, and how that is now an integrated process, and how I think about change management, risk management, communication management.
Got it. Got it. Now, what have you've been doing this for how long now?
I think about 5-ish years. Mm-hmm.
So, what have you learned about yourself throughout that progression? Because it sounds like you apply these things
Mm-hmm.
not only when there's a mistake. You're like, okay, all the tools and techniques that I've learned to put a program for it, I need to reverse engineer it to make sure I'm executing well. But
Mm-hmm.
do you apply some of these skills? And it's a two-part question
Mm-hmm.
to your personal life. But what have you learned? First part, what have you learned about yourself through that career transition? Right? What are some things you should share with the folks? Be like, this is what happens when you take the leap at 70%, specifically ladies. Like, I'm taking a leap at 70%. This
Mm-hmm.
is what can happen for you.
Yeah. Oh man, I love this. So I think one insight that I had, oh, thank you, was that when I choose to bet on myself, it somehow works out, right? And I'm so glad that because think about it, if I didn't take that leap of faith, I would have not gotten that full-time job. I might maybe still be doing the job thinking about, oh, what would it be if I had this full-time role, if I decided to go all in. And I think I would kind of live my life in my own shadow of regret. So it solidified even beyond that LinkedIn role. Is like I can figure it out. And even if I'm not perfect in all of it, that will be enough. So that mindset has carried me forward throughout my career and throughout my personal life. I made the first move, and I now with my now husband.
There you go.
So making the first move, it's scary at first, but the more repetitions you make, it kind of becomes who you are. And
Hmm.
I want to be known as that girl, as that lady, or as that boss woman. So I think it has a lot to do with like how I fearlessly take things on for myself. And in the lens of my professional work or passion, similarly, I think what makes an effective program manager is your ability to navigate the unknown. And right, there's that parallel, because when you're searching or applying for that next role or taking on a potential career pivot, that is scary. That is you navigating the unknown, right? And and I think that's what gravitates me to being and pursuing this field of program management, is the fact that my
Hmm.
days, I never know what it's going to look like. And I think that gives me a lot of excitement. And a lot of people like working with me, because where there are folks that are super scared, I'm kind of the confident one, and I can help navigate a team to do something through fruition with just that sheer kind of, let's just do it. Let's just get after this. That mindset, that fearlessless mindset.
Got it. So
Mhm.
now you have a guide out, the ultimate guide to pivot and Thrive in
Mhm.
Program Management. So is that an
Mhm.
ebook or a physical book?
That is entirely ebook.
Awesome.
All for
So,
free.
hey, folks, go to the page, grab it as quick as possible. It's right there in her profile. So what made you put this out now? Because now you're transferring those skills into
Mhm.
almost a teacher slash coach, right?
Mhm.
You're now saying, hey, it is possible.
Mhm.
Where did that epiphany come from to say I got to share this story?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm taking a look at the my guide out here too. So I would say the impetus for me, even pursuing coaching at all, and also like putting things out there in the world where I can put my face on it, is a lot of people had reached out to me on LinkedIn, I think over the past 6 months, where they look at my LinkedIn, they look at my background, see that I've been doing all sorts of stuff, and just ask me, hey, how'd you do it? Or can you tell me a little bit more about program management? I hear a lot about product management and project management, but
Hmm.
I don't really know too much about this, but seems like it's working for you. So spill the tea there. And I've gotten a lot of those. And then it wasn't until I just thought about it. Okay, I want to help people. I want to help people at scale. What does that look like for me? It can be coaching, it can be creating an ebook or digital courses. I saw amazing creators take this route. So that ebook was a way for me to solidify my thought leadership in this space and just break down the walls of like what we know around like career myths and program management and what we know about project management, all of that into a guide, uh, so that I can help as many people just get the general awareness about this field for them to then come to their own realization, that's which is, ooh, this is really interesting. I want to learn more about this. I want to upskill myself around this. Or it could be, oh, I have enough and I don't think this is for me, and just like weeding that out as a potential career option too.
Got it. What are some of the myths? That was a great tee up
Mhm.
for this question. What are some of the myths about program management that you've come across?
Yeah. So I'll share this again, which is around the PMP, because this is a really big topic, right? Like to be a project manager, a program manager, companies look for people that are PMP certified. And I'm not throwing any shade to the folks that are PMP certified, but based on my own story and my experience, I realized I didn't need that to get the job. What I needed was the confidence and the ability to articulate how I have led projects end to end in previous jobs, to then say how I can mimic that same amount of impact to this other role. I think your ability to have that experience, that's one, and then articulate that story trumps the technical knowledge. So
Mm.
that's, I would say, myth number one. Another thing is, I think program management is more, it indexes more around the soft skills more than the technical skills. So,
Really?
mhm, like I've learned on the job how to create a Gantt chart or like build some slides here and there or a project plan. And there's just so many great resources out there, that anybody can learn. Anybody. I think what is harder to excel in are the soft skills. So knowing how to work with senior stakeholders and senior leadership. How are you coming off across confident, poised, and to like be able to present something to them, to weave them in on a journey, bring them along. I think that is a powerful skill in program management, and I think in any career in that respect, right? Just like putting a stake in the ground and saying, regardless of my title or my role, my level of seniority, to inspire them, motivate whoever your audience is so important than the technical skills.
What are you most appreciative of from the host of new skills you've learned that you can say this is massively transferable? And I
Mhm.
know going forward, because you, again, for the folks that are tuning in now, you transition. You know, you had customer success manager background, transition, took the leap, got into it, and now you're a senior project, program manager.
Yeah.
So you've increased and got promoted, which is tough
Mhm.
to do. Again, you could be up against so many folks with the certifications, et cetera, highly credentialed. But what skills you think elevated you and that you're most appreciative of? Like, wow, like
Mhm.
this is a skill I can take everywhere.
Yeah. Hmm.
Aside from, and I'm gonna do it this way, aside from the soft skills, because it looked like you mastering that. So,
Oh, thank you. Let's see. I mean, hmm. That's hard because I think it really, well, I think there are multiple soft skills,
mhm,
right? The communication is one aspect that we talked about. Emotional intelligence is
mm,
another aspect that I think really sets apart a great PM from like a good PM to an amazing program manager. I think with me, hope you don't think that this is a cop out of an answer.
no, go ahead.
But I think what has really catapulted my career is the influence without authority. And I kind of brought in like some specific examples of what that looks like.
Mhm,
But I think that unlocks you to being seen with senior stakeholders, to building your brand within your company that you're an expert in this space. And so I would say that that has really changed the game for me. Again, um, it doesn't go, I don't go from 0 to 100, right? I'm just fine tuning these skills.
mhm,
But I would definitely say it's not shying from scared opportunities, helps you refine your ability to influence, right? The fact that, hey, Jean, I'm going to stick you in a room with several leaders and it's your job to propose this brand new program, talk about it, talk about why we need this, the impact that this is going to have to our company, our teams, our customers. I think if you are confident in yourself to thrive in environments like that, people will take notice.
mm.
And
Love
when,
it.
yeah, so and that creates even more opportunities for you to lead complex programs that gives you trust that, hey, if there is something crazy going on at work, I trust Jean to figure it out, or I trust Orlando to figure it out because she has a track record of doing that.
Love it. Take us through some of the highlights of your ebook.
Hmm.
Don't give us all the sauce because I want folks to get
Yeah.
over there and sign up and get a copy. I will as well. But
Hmm.
definitely walk us through some of the things they'll start to understand at a
Hmm.
kind of at a bullet point higher level.
Yeah. So the way that I break it out is like foundational, and then I kind of go even more in depth, more high level. So I think the biggest thing it covers is like the differences and the nuances between project and program
Mm,
management,
mm,
because people like to throw those out and think that they're talking about the same things, but
right.
it's not. So that, and it talks about career transition. So if I do have my certification, what are kind of my next steps? Or if I don't have the certification and I am in this like untraditional career path exploration, what might that look like for me? It talks through measuring success as a program manager, the tools that we use, some different frameworks. So there's a lot. There's a lot there. And then I like to sprinkle in some fun things as well. There's a lot. I feel like this space is kind of growing, it's flourishing, and I'm happy to see that I'm not the only content creator around the project and program management space. So I even have a curated list of the top creators in the space to follow,
Mm,
career content, PM coaches. So it's kind of your all in one guide to you.
awesome. Do you see an evolution of that to where you may do some group coaching for those budding folks that are like, hey, I'm loving the ebook, I'm loving what Gene is talking about, is this a career path for me? How do I get connected? Is Are you looking to grow that kind of coaching space to get folks in the industry?
Um, Short answer is yes. And I have taught a live cohort based course on Maven. If you're familiar
Mm-hmm.
with Maven, I taught my first cohort, I think just a month ago, and that was the first foray into group coaching. It's called Pivoting to Program Management. It's on Maven. And yeah, I've tested that last month, and if there is an appetite, it seems like there's definitely an appetite for like that community approach, and just the cohort based like environment. So that's definitely something that I want to continue doing, and seeing if that's helpful for folks. I used to do one-on-one, but juggling a full-time one and one-on-one coaching is
Yeah.
definitely not an easy feat. So these scalable options, be it the ebook or maybe courses down the line, um, is something that I'm thinking more and more about every day.
Maybe I'm gonna throw it out there, Gene. I'm gonna just
Mhm.
throw it out. Maybe a program podcast, program management. I don't know. You never know. I see it. I can see it happening. I can see it happening where you can do that because it's so niche,
Yeah.
so niche in that, like you said earlier, folks have a different thought where they synonymously throw project and program management into it, and it's like, okay, let me separate the two.
Mhm.
There's definitely some transferable skills,
Yeah.
but let me clearly separate the two and walk you guys through what this is and what the benefits are and what are the skills you can learn. But I think the cool part about your story too is really the pivoting piece. Again, I'm a harp on the 70% because I think that's huge because that is the number for the masses, for again, for women who do apply. They wait for 99 or wait for
Mhm.
100. They don't pull the trigger at 70, and you're a living example of that. They're like, hey, it can work, but the behind the scenes foundation for you is that you had the confidence.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm gonna figure it out.
Mhm.
Like, no matter what, this is what I
Mhm.
want, I'm gonna figure it out. The
Yeah.
worst they can say is no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you come across folks who have the interest but don't have the confidence?
You know what? It kills me that I think most people who reach out to me through like DMs or they just reach out, they when I look at their background, I'm like, you would be a phenomenal
Mm,
PM. You have the soft skills, and just the thoughtfulness behind, like you can tell a lot about a person through like their own outreach too,
hmm
right?
hmm
On top of their resume. Um, and a lot of them come to me saying like, I don't have the perfect background, or I don't have years of experience doing this. And I think that stems because it is a confidence issue, or the fact that you're struggling from things like imposter syndrome,
mm.
which I struggle with too. Even though I'm coming off here saying that I'm really confident in myself, there are days where
Oh yeah.
I do feel like I'm not good enough, or I feel like I'm a fraud. But I think, again, just trusting yourself that, hey, you're going to figure it out. You're having a bad day, but let's figure out how we can make this happen for you, and just not lose faith is what yields the results, in my opinion. Um,
I think that's so powerful. Again, being that transparent. I don't care at what level if you come across anyone says, "No, I'm confident 100% of the time in myself," they're lying.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because you don't know what the next day will bring and whether or not you have the answer to it. So, at that very moment, you're like, "I got to figure this out." Your perception may be, "Oh, she ain't got it. No
Mhm.
worries. Hey, here's the next project. Yada yada yada." You're like, "Crap, this is new. This is new. This is something different. I can lay the foundation, but whoa, okay, who do I need to bring together to get this
Yeah.
happen?" So yeah, I love that. Yeah, we all go through that imposter syndrome to some degree, no matter how far up the corporate chain you are. So love that you said that.
Mhm.
When you talk about and think about the evolution of the industry, where do you see it going? Where's the most demand? Is it in the tech space?
Mm.
Or do you see like it can be expanded into, well, it is,
Mhm.
but where do you see the biggest demand based on your viewpoint?
Yeah. So we can just talk about the tech space first because
Hmm. Hmm.
since that's majority of my connections and the jobs that I find are within the tech space. And I would say more companies are realizing the value of bringing on a program manager at any size for the matter.
Hmm.
Um, Fun fact is, when I joined Figma almost 2 years ago, I what was presented to me was that this was the very first one of the first program manager roles um, of the function that I was working in. It's product support. And when I jumped into the role, it was one of the first PM roles of the entire company.
Wow.
So it made me realize, okay, they're starting to see the value. They're a little late in the game compared to places like LinkedIn and Facebook, where there are just teams of program managers. But I think that goes to show that people are hiring because they recognize the value that PMs bring to the table.
Hmm.
And I think other companies, if you don't want to fall behind, you got to follow suit. And so I start to see even more niche PM roles. I talked about earlier that my role was go to market enablement program manager for LinkedIn. Now I'm seeing like creator content program manager or like voice of customer program manager or
Mm.
newsletter program manager or marketing ops program manager. So if you know what your secret sauces are, kind of like how I knew my secret sauce was like client services, customer success, enablement, I think it will definitely help you find that pocket for you that makes the most sense. But I'll flip it to share some other industry insight that I know as well. So my husband is a scientist currently at Genentech. And, anyways, he talks about how there are project leads, program leads that play a really fundamental role in drug discovery.
Mm.
And that gives me, wow, okay, so even the biotech, the pharma industries have these roles, albeit again, like the day to day might look a little bit differently, but it's still the core is that they need people to help facilitate the launch of something to kind of
Hmm.
play a orchestrator or facilitator role. So I wouldn't be surprised that yeah, this domain is just primed for growth. It's not going to go out of style. If anything, it's going to I like to think that it's going to blow up and it's going to be just as sexy as like product management.
I love that. So yeah, because you make a good point with that, because right, the core skill, like you said earlier too, was developing the Gantt chart. So helping them find the process or improving their process, but to also say, it's one thing to say, here's the process. The other thing is to say, if A doesn't get done, B can't get started. If B doesn't get done, C and D doesn't get started. So we have to make sure we're on time,
Yeah.
all right, on budget, et cetera, making
Yeah.
sure we're doing the due diligence to complete A so the
Mhm.
project can move forward. So
Mhm.
that is, I mean, those types of skill sets to foresee that and then gather and put everything in place. That's a lot. That's a lot. So
Mhm.
tremendous value for a company to foresee it, and especially in the tech space, right? Because things move fast. New apps, new this, new
Yeah,
applications, CRMs, whatever coming out the woodwork. You got to know if we launch, is it going to launch correctly, right?
yeah,
So I think folks like you set a company straight. Like, now, if you want to go and skip C and D, here's the problem that you're going to have with EF3 all the way through Z. Like,
yeah,
that's going to cause a chain reaction where we're back to square one. So let's not do that.
yeah.
Um, that's what I love, and I love the how detailed you folks get in just setting structure, because you start to wonder. I know you've had this happen, being in that role, where you wonder, how did you guys get things done prior? Like, walk me through that. Yeah, no, don't say any names.
Uh-huh.
We don't throw any shade at any company, but
Mhm.
when you're having to go in and kind of rework
Mhm.
what was done incorrectly,
Mhm.
like, talk us through that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I found that in every role, and I think a great PM is able to kind of identify where there are those opportunities for growth, just like flipping the narrative, right? Like, where can we get a little bit tighter here? Where can we get a little bit better in terms of collaboration and working less siloed? And for me, I one of my areas of growth. I was going to say flaws. And I was like, let me just switch that up. But areas of growth is I'm a very big on executing. I'm like, I see that that's done wrong. Let me go ahead and do it,
Mm,
which is great. But when you're working with different teams and people and emotions and sensitivities, you got to be very, very mindful. And which is why, like, I'm sure you bring that up, is you have to be mindful in your approach. So, what I've done is when I'm new to a role or new to a project, I like to do an audit.
hmm
Let me just do an intake of everything that's going on. Um, get a footing and like, okay, what's happening right now? What's the state of the union? Once I have that, then I sprinkle in like, let's do some one-on-one discovery calls with people on my team. Let's hear from their perspective. What are some pain points? What they love? What don't they love? Right. And kind of get an understanding across the board with like people like, hey, I want your input on this so I can help you.
hmm
So if you go in with that kind of mindset, then when you do present something, you can go back and say, hey, it's not just what I want, but here's what we heard people want based on some gaps that we know. Add some data, add some anecdotes and quotes. But I think if you have that, the audit and actual like real discovery calls with people, you can then like tailor your story, right?
hmm hmm
And that makes people much more receptive to your ideas and improvements and say, hey, you're right. Um, we should do it. And then you kind of have what you need to have the blessing to move forward.
Got it. Got it. What would you say from, because you mentioned earlier too about being able to, and this is on the communication side of with
Mhm,
the soft skills, pitching that new project that's to
mhm,
come or should come and
mhm,
has value. What would you say is the strongest skill set you need to have? And when you're in that setting of whether it's senior leaders and they're waiting for, what's the cost,
mhm,
why now,
mhm,
what's the return, et
mhm,
cetera, et
mhm.
cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I mean, Orlando, are you sure you're not a program manager on the side?
I
Because
know. I'm undercover. I'm undercover.
you're undercover. Because you're hitting on a lot of the things that make up the role of a PM, project program manager,
hmm
and what leaders, stakeholders care about, right? So I think just a tip that I've learned is just starting with the why. Why are we doing this? Why is this so important?
hmm
Um, what gaps does this connect to? What pain points does this connect to? And then it's like if we don't do anything at all, here's the impact of that. And but let's say if we do this, what could we see? What is the expected result or the ROI of that? I think anchoring that from the get-go kind of it sets everybody, you're basically setting the room and
Hmm.
aligning everybody on like, hey, this is the North Star. Do we align on it? If it's a yes, the how and the what's are kind of easy to talk about. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's what that looks like, the timelines, etc. I think the power in your pitch or your proposal really is around the why and the
Hmm.
impact.
How much data are you bringing into that, um, historically and comparably with
Mhm.
other companies who may have done what what you're trying to do? How much does that come into play?
Yeah, with data, so with the projects that I've had to pitch, I think ideally in a perfect world, you have your quantitative data. Maybe it's survey results, maybe it's
Mhm.
like user data, metrics data, performance data. If you have that, great. Um, the data that I always put in is the qualitative data.
Mm,
Because that's easy to get and that's within your control. Sometimes the dashboard, the numbers, you might not have clean data, but indexing on people's anecdotes, their testimonials, even thinking about like just pasting in quotes. It's like here's what the pain is. Here is where people are really stifled in their work. They're spending. There are some creative ways you can think about. They're spending 5 hours a day doing X, Y, Z
mhm.
daily, and if we did X, we did Y, then they could save 30% of the manual work. Um, and even though if you don't have like a dashboard for that, just like anecdotes, like how much time are you spending right now sending a survey? And how much time are you spending now after this like new tool that we're piloting is kind of a creative way to think through. But in anything that I've run, it's definitely talking to the team that I'm supporting to get really clear on what is the problem here.
So
Mhm.
I think that's crucial too, and I love that. So as a undercover program manager,
Mhm. Yeah, I
being
know.
deputized by Gene here,
Mhm.
give us a summary of again the overall benefits of pivoting into this career.
Yeah. So there's so much, but I want to make sure that my response is not, let's see, it can help the masses. So
Hmm.
one, I think program management, if you're the type of person who likes seeing the fruit of your labor, it's definitely for you because oftentimes you are supporting the work, and you don't have control over the output, right? But some like why I keep gravitating to this field is like I start something from start to finish and you can see a clear measurable kind of like before state and after state. So that is very critical. And I think the other pieces are being very autonomous. The role is not, it can be very messy at times, right? Navigating chaos and uncertainty, but how do you put structure into
Hmm.
place? Um, so I think if you're the type of person that kind of thrives in that thriving in ambiguity,
Mm, that's
like,
good. Yeah.
mhm. And I would say thriving in ambiguity is a PM superpower. If you, in that will make you kind of untouchable in the domain. Thriving in ambiguity, seeing the fruits of your labor, which kind of incentivizes and motivates you to lead a badass program to make sure that what you do is not just for like, let me just launch it, ship it out on to the next one, but really making sure that there's real impact. It helps you, right? It helps you when when you are interviewing for that next company, and they're going to say, what's the impact that you've had at LinkedIn when you drove this company? You
Mhm.
have, you were there, you know the impact because you are the one that thought of measurement and the success metrics. So I would say those two for now.
Awesome. There's so much that we can unpack, but I'm checking on the time, make sure we're mindful. So a few more questions.
Mhm.
What would you give folks as an action plan or one tip that they can immediately start to apply when it comes to having interest in transitioning or starting a career in program management?
Mhm. So I would say start where you are, um, is one. Whether it's, I think it starts, the progression is starting in your current role.
Hmm.
If you're employed, starting in your current role, what are the opportunities where you can raise your hand and lead something end to end? It doesn't need to be a big project like I led, but maybe it's revamping team onboarding or revamping a team newsletter or kicking off a quarterly team offsite. Anything that you can kind of hang your hat around and you're driving is one. And for the folks that aren't employed and seeking that those opportunities to flex that skill, it doesn't
Hmm.
have to be in your job, right? There are volunteer opportunities, community work, ad hoc work. Maybe you're shadowing somebody who is a PM and they're working on something. Maybe you can help them create like a project tracker or an intake tracker or a feedback tracker. Every little thing counts.
Love it. Where can folks find you to consume your content?
Huh? Yeah, well, you can find me on LinkedIn where you and I connected, Orlando. I think LinkedIn is the place that I spend a lot of my time in outside of
Hmm.
work. And it's definitely a place where it gets me up at night.
Love it. So, last question:
Mhm.
what keeps you going every day? What's your ultimate north star in
Mm,
this space?
I think what keeps me going is just the positive feedback that I've been getting from my community saying that, hey, Jean, oh, I didn't know about the differences between project, program, product management. Or like, I didn't know I needed the PMP. I didn't know that I don't need the PMP to pursue a role in this field. Just like undecoupling the myths is such a
Yeah.
cool thing to see. I'm like, yes, or like even right now, the 70% fitting the job description, right? Like you don't need to check all the boxes to pursue this role. And I hope I can help more people with kind of what we shared and through the content that I will continue to share every day.
Absolutely love it, Gene. Thank you
Woo!
so much. I don't know why. Can I share? Can I share this? I'm
Yes.
asking as I'm sharing it. So, this young lady was nervous. I don't know. There was no. She was phenomenal. The content.
Oh,
I just love folks that come on and have a poise. And can give relatable information and story, and ultimately, right, and actionable advice that folks can walk away from each episode and apply something. So you have absolutely done that. I look forward to continuing our relationship, our friendship here. But thank you so much for joining me. Thank you.
thank you, Orland. This was a blast. I hope to. I'm always here if you need me to join another one.
Absolutely, absolutely. Plus, I'm gonna get my deputy my deputy badge,
Yes.
program manager. Once you release that
Honorary program manager by Jean Kang. You are.
exactly. That's going to be the new certification. Forget the PMP. Get it, get it from Gene. Thank you so much, folks. So we are going to sign off, but absolutely follow Jean Kane and get her ebook. Connect with her, ask her questions. She'll respond. She'll educate you. She is a phenomenal young lady. But tune in, folks, as we continue to give you actionable advice right here on the Career Talks podcast. Hold on for me, Gene.